Hello everyone, welcome back in this video. So today we'll be diving into the Generative Adversarial Network GAN. If you have watched the early lecture, then you already know all the basics about it. So today we're going to unpack the actual maths behind why GAN work, what breaks it in practice, and what fixes researchers to came up with, including DCGAN, WGAN, and Conditional GAN. Okay, so let's jump into it. So for a quick recap, a GAN has two networks fighting with each other. The generator G that takes random noise Z, sample from some simple distributions like the Gaussian, transform it into something that looks like a real data G of Z. The discriminator D that looks at a sample and output probability, is this fake or real? Then they train together in what's called as a minimax game. G is trying to fool D and D is trying to catch G. That's adversarial tug of war, and literally the name comes from here. And moving forward, the minimax objective. Okay, so let's formalize that. The objective function looks like min over G and max over D of V of dg equal to the expected value of log of dx for some real data plus the expected value of log 1 minus d of gx for generative data. Here's the intuition about it. The d want to push the dx close to 1 for real data and dgx close to 0 for a fake data. That maximizes the objective. G on the other hand wants d of g of z to be close to 1, so it's trying to minimize the second term by fooling the discriminator. Two network, opposite goals and same loss function. Okay, now we have something called as about the optimal discriminator. Okay, so now here why it's get interestingly. If you fix G and ask that what's the best possibility for the discriminator, you can actually derive a closed form answer. The optimal discriminator is d of x equals p of data divided by p of data x plus pg of x, where pg is the distribution that the generator is implicitly producing. This make intuitive sense. If real data is way more likely at some point of time x than the fake data, the discriminator should output have a value close to 1 there, and vice versa. This formula is a bridge to a much deeper theoretical results. Okay, now moving towards the global optimizer and the JS divergence. If you substitute that optimal discriminator back into the objective, something elegant falls out. The cost function becomes C of G equal to negative log of 4 plus 2 times the Jensen-Shannon divergence between P data and the G data. The Jensen-Shannon divergence (JSD) is a way of measuring how different two probability distribution are. It's always greater than or equal to 0, and it's always 0 when the two distributions are identical. So what does this tells us? The global minima of GAN game happens exactly when P of G equals to P of data, meaning the generator has learned to perfectly match the real data distribution. At that point, the discriminator can't tell real from the fake at all. So d of star or put exact one half every way. It's literally just guessing, just the theoretical wins condition for the GAN. Now moving forward towards the training algorithm. Okay, so how do we actually train the thing in practical? It's an alternate optimization. Step 1, sample a mini batch of real data. Step 2, sample a mini batch of noisy vector. Step 3, update the discriminator by ascending the gradient. Remember the D is just maximizing. Moving forward, we have step 4, where update the generator by descending the gradient. GD is minimizing. So you repeat this back and forth, batches over batches, epochs after epochs. In theory, it converges to a Nash equilibrium where we just talk about. In practical, it's messier, which brings us the next section, that is vanishing gradient. Okay, so here's the problem number 1, vanishing gradient. Earlier in training, the discriminator is usually better than the generator. It's trivial to D to spot fake samples. When that happens, the term log 1 minus d of g of x saturates, meaning it flatten out its gradient, become essentially 0. The generator get almost no useful signal to learn from it, so it's stuck. This can be fixed using the non-saturating loss. Instead of having g minimizes loss 1 minus d of gx, we flip it. G instead maximizing the expert value of log d of gx. Mathematically, this pushes towards the same idea. fixed point, but it gives much more stronger gradient early in the training where G desperately needed them. Then we have second thing, that is the model collapse. This is when the generator find one of few outputs that are reliable, fool the discriminator, and just keep producing those, ignoring the diversity of the real data. Imagine training a GAN on handwritten digits and it only ever generate the digit 7, technically convincing but completely useless as a generative model. This happened because of weak and oscillation feedback from D and generally unstable training dynamics. This can be fixed including techniques like the mini batch discriminator, where the discriminator looks at batch of sample together instead of one at a time, unroll GAN, and various diversity prompting loss terms. Moving forward towards DCGAN. Now let's talk about the architecture of DCGAN, that is Deep Convolutional GAN. That was a landmark paper that gave practical guideline for actually getting these things to be at a trainable stability on data, on images. Replacing pooling layer with a stride convolution in D and fractional stride convolution in G. Use batch normalization in both the networks. Drop full connected hidden layers in favor of full convolutional architecture. Use ReLU activation in G with a tanh on the final output layer and Leaky ReLU through D. Okay, now moving forward towards the next part, we have the WGAN. The next big leap was the Washington GAN or the WGAN. Instead of using Jensen-Shannon divergence, it uses the Earth mover distance, also called as the Washington 1 distance. The loosely speaking measures the minimum cost of transforming one distribution to another. This can be also used called the KR duality objective function, min over G, max over D in some constraint set of the expected D of X minus the expected D of G of Z. So the catch is that D, also called as the critic instead of the discriminator, has to be one Lipschitz, basically a smoother constraint. So this is an enforcement either by clipping the weights and in the original WGAN with a gradient penalty term in the improved WGAN GP. Why does this matter? Because WGAN loss actually correlated with the sample quality, so you can watch the loss curves, and now if its training is going well, it can lead to a noticeable more stable training with less model collapse. Now we move forward towards the conditional GAN. So quickly mentioning the conditional GAN or the CGAN, the idea is simple. Condition both G and D on an extra label or attribute Z, so that instead of D of X you get D of X given Y, instead of G of X you get G of Z given Y. Why does this matter? It's give you the control. Instead of generating a random image, you can say, let generate me a cat or generate me a digit 7. So the label can be steer as the output. Okay. Moving forward towards the end, let's wrap up about it. So the GANs are the fundamental min-max game generated between a generator and the discriminator. Theoretically, the optimal solution connect directly to the Jensen-Shannon divergence. In practical, we run into the vanishing gradient and more collapse and the field responses with the fixes like the non-saturation loss. DCGAN architecture guidelines and the WCGAN distance-based reformation. Now next time we'll go even further, looking at more advanced like the StyleGAN and the big GAN, that how we actually evaluate GAN using the matrices like the FID and the inception score, and how GAN stack up against VAE and the diffusion model. Thank you for this. We'll be covering, this is the third lecture. In the fourth and fifth lecture, we'll be covering about the coding part of GAN. GAN is really important, that's why we are covering it in so detail. Thank you.